My name is Oli Caldow. I'm the Director of Photography at Black Bean Productions. I've been very fortunate to travel throughout Eastern and Southern Africa over the last 5 to 6 years. There are many wilderness areas that I could mention that I absolutely love filming in terms of the landscape and the wildlife and just also the human interaction that we've encountered in communities that are in those areas. But I think if the top of my head I had to name one place, I would definitely have to say it's Niassa in Mozambique. We've been lucky enough to go up there twice to film. It's extremely remote. There's something really beautiful and unique about the landscape, the wildlife, and just the fact that there's just so little human population there, which is quite rare. One of the biggest challenges when filming in such remote places is our gear, our film gear. As a director of photography, I've always got a really solid crew who we work with, but you will often have a case where you won't be able to charge your batteries or download your cards efficiently. This just means you have to be really prepared prior to departure. If you've worked with any of us at Black Bean, you'll know we pride ourselves on taking care of our gear, making sure that footage is downloaded on a daily basis, not taking any risks. Otherwise, you run the chance of losing all that content that you shot that day. We worked on a documentary for 3 months in the Serengeti. Challenges for gear was the pouring rain at times. We had to film in it. It's a documentary. If something's happening, you go out there. We had to film at nighttime, in the dark. We had to spend countless hours and nights out in the field with anti-poaching units, trying to potentially track down poachers. And those are huge challenges as it is. But to add on camera gear, storytelling, personal health, it can be a challenge. So yeah, that's a big one for me that I'll never forget. When filming wild animals, it's very important to make sure that the animal comes first over what you're trying to achieve in terms of footage. I've been lucky enough to start my adventure into the wild in terms of filmmaking with James, who was a guide and has a great amount of experience being on foot, on a vehicle, in situations where we are with wildlife. And he's always taught me the best way to approach wildlife, the safest way to approach wildlife, and to never make an animal feel uncomfortable. You can often be put in a dangerous situation if you don't respect the wildlife, and I think it's absolutely key to make sure you know what you're doing and to not push the boundaries. And if you have a lot of patience, you'll get what you need and you won't interfere with the wildlife and what's happening in front of you. Filming wildlife, especially on foot, can be very dangerous. We've always believed, and we know it's the right thing to do, is to respect wildlife, respect their boundaries. If you feel that the situation isn't right, pull back. But I will never be on foot, even with the 7 years of experience I've had in the African bush, without someone next to me who has a vast amount of experience, keeping an eye open in front of me, behind me, and knowing how to read the bush better than I know how to read the bush. It's about getting the wind direction right with particular species. It's about reading their behavior in terms of their body language. It's about approaching them in the right way. And if you do all of those things correctly, and you respect the wildlife and respect where you are, you will get an amazing shot if you're patient enough, and everyone will be happy, both wildlife and us as the camera team. Do I have a favorite animal to film? I somehow that question gets asked a lot, and often on every trip, that animal that's my favorite changes because of an experience I've had that I haven't had prior to that. I've been very fortunate enough to walk black rhino in Zimbabwe, which is an incredible species to film and be on foot with, gets the heart racing. Elephants have always been one of my most beautiful animals to film, breeding herds across the Serengeti, herds of 100, 200. That's just things you don't see every day in life. Lions, big prides of lions, have been incredible, to see a pride of 22 lions in the open savannas when the sun's rising behind them is just, there's no communication on the vehicle with the crew. Everyone's just filming because they're so engaged in what's happening in front of you. So my favorite animal, I would say, is rhino, maybe, the white rhino specifically, not just because it's become such an endangered species. They have incredible good hearing. They tend to be very skittish. And if you can get that golden shot of a white rhino or even a black rhino, low down, in great light, without making it feel threatened, then you've really achieved your goal as a filmmaker. What advice would I give to an up-and-coming wildlife filmmaker? I was in that position 6, 7 years ago. I truly believe the more time you spend in the bush with experienced individuals who have spent a lot of time in the bush and know how to read the bush and the wildlife in a very natural and safe way will make you only become better and better at filming wildlife. It's so key to know wildlife behavior really well. And once you start to understand how wildlife live on a daily basis, then you'll get a really good idea of how to film them. So my advice would be to get out there as much as you can, even if it's doing stuff for free or tagging on to shoots, and just learn the bush, learn people who have spent a lot of time out there, and it doesn't matter what camera you start on. I started on an old 5D Mark II, and to this day, some of the footage that's used from that Mark II is used in current films we use today. So yeah, it's just time out there with the right people and just learning your craft on location, and try avoid too many YouTube tutorials. What have I learned from animal behavior, from my adventures in the wild? I've learned a lot. It all started where I came from a commercial background. I had spent many years filming around the world on reality shows, big commercials in South Africa and abroad. And James Suter, gave me a call one day and said, let's go ahead into the bush and start making some wildlife content. I'll never forget the first day when he took me on a safari walk with my camera, and we did a walk, an encounter with a big male bull elephant that was very relaxed. And to this day, I don't think I've ever been more scared in my life, because it was my first encounter. And that was my initiation into this world of wildlife filmmaking. Since that day, I've really have put in effort to learn animal behavior. I've learned how to approach them on foot in the right way, wind direction, body behavior. There's so many key things that you need to know when you're out there that not only makes the animal not feel threatened, but ultimately gives you the opportunity to get the best footage possible when on location. I've learned that animals can be extremely unpredictable. A huge amount of patience is required, and ultimately the biggest goal that we've learned that I've learned is that just to respect animals in their own environment. The animals come first, we come second, and as long as we don't push that, everyone wins.